What do you get when you combine Guy Ritchie-style cool English crime dramas, Driver, and a proto-GTA-style open world? You get The Getaway. Kinda. Hey, thanks for joining me on this premiere episode of Koobert Opens Worlds. I'm intending the Cow series to take a look back at the dominant genre of the 2000s, the open-worldy, drivey, shooty game. I'm going to be pretty relaxed in what qualifies for the series, as seminal open-worldy, drivey game Driver doesn't even have on-foot sections, or a map full of mission icons, and even The Getaway is too early to really be part of this formula. There's a lot of overlooked and interesting titles in this range, and as they all start creeping towards 20 years old, I figured, why not take a look back at this genre during its peak? Let's get started. Originally aiming to be a launch game, and a genuine bit of retaliation to the much-hyped Dreamcast title Metropolis Street Racer, Sony, Team Soho, and Brendan McNamara pitched The Getaway as a breakout launch tentpole release for the PlayStation 2. This didn't happen. As luck would have it, neither did Metropolis Street Racer on Dreamcast, which was still not available by the time of the launch of the PlayStation 2 on 26 October 2000 in North America, or 24 November 2000 in Europe. It turns out, even as a 5th gen, 6th gen, look, I'm old, and I don't know how kids count generations. At any rate, even as a 6th generation console, developing a detailed recreation of a modern city like London takes time, which led both MSR and The Getaway to miss their target release dates by literal years. MSR also had two other cities, but not to the level of detail which The Getaway captured London. The Getaway did finally come out in December 2002 in Europe and January 2003 in North America, and it was a day one purchase for me. College-age Koobert loved open worlds and detailed recreations of cities and the Guy Ritchie movies. However, reviewers gave this an average Metacritic score of 72, which is pretty harsh considering the curve on which video games are usually rated. The whole open-world crime game scene of late 2002, early 2003 looks very different than had the game released back in 2000. Team Soho very much emulates the mission structure of the original Driver combined with the innovative for the time on-foot combat mechanics. But one juggernaut release looms over The Getaway's final date: Grand Theft Auto 3. Heck, two juggernaut releases loom if you think about it. Grand Theft Auto Vice City released 2 months earlier, refining the look and style of the Grand Theft Auto series, and deepening the sheer amount of stuff you can do in it. But The Getaway was deep into its development by the time GTA 3 released. And while you can be sure they played and looked at GTA 3, there's definitely more structured and divided sense of gameplay flow. Like Driver before it, the game has missions progressing linearly, one after another. Heck, it doesn't even have the answering machine job selections of Driver 1. There's no driving around an open world map looking for work. To call it a Grand Theft Auto clone isn't really accurate, not only as it was in the works well before GTA 3, but also as it doesn't really take the general idea of a non-linear open world into account as you progress through missions. There is an open map, but whether or not you can navigate it as you please depends on the mission. Some missions allow a leisurely pace to reach your goals, others engage a very strict timer you can't actually see. This gets into a major design point of The Getaway: the lack of UI. There's no minimap, there's no map whatsoever, other than the one included in the box. And I think this was only included in the box for Black Monday, I genuinely can't remember. The game world is a semi-realistic map of London, somewhat compressed and missing much of its smaller streets, but the landmarks and main roads are in the correct places. With no compass or GPS telling you where to go, you have to solely rely on your knowledge of the city and the blinking turn signals to tell you where to go next. Even then, they more generally nudge you in the correct direction than giving you exact point-by-point turns. And following them at face value will end up with you driving the wrong way up a one-way street, which can be a problem. There's also no health bars, no damage meters for your car, no bullet counts. You can see the amount of health remaining based on the staggering of your character and the amount of blood on their clothes. And your car begins to steam from a broken radiator and then darkening smoke as it quickly approaches an engine fire. You pick up limited use weapons that just work until they don't, meaning that you have to have the general idea of how many bullets it has left in your mind as you use it. In execution, it's both interesting and frustrating. Honestly, the health, bullets, and car damage never are game-breaking or that bad. It does rely on a novel regenerating health mechanic that would in many ways be adopted by many action games to come. However, to do so requires you to lean against a wall and slowly recharge health as the blood stains on your clothes get slurped up. It's all in the name of immersion, and I guess it makes more sense than picking up Doom-style health packs. It also has a subtle element of music cues signaling that you're being pursued by one of the rival gangs, though the choice of some of these stings may be questionable, especially for the Jamaican and Chinese gangs.
Give it up!
Above all else, the game wants to be cinematic.
What happened to McCormack?
It does this through the use of well-directed cutscenes, photographs used for textures, detailed for the time facial and motion capture, and the screen left clear of UI elements. The push for games to be more like movies is a trend you'll see come back every so often. Cinematic storytelling was a goal from titles like Ninja Gaiden on the NES with its cutscenes, the simplified interface of Lucasfilm's Loom or Sierra's Manhunter New York, and taking over gaming in the mid-1990s with the Sillywood era of full-motion video games.
Need to wash our hands again.
There we go.
Oh,
Wash,
but then
wash,
we need to
wash.
lotion them
Wash,
again.
wash. Rub-a-dub-dub. Dry the hands off.
My call sign, it's how I live, it's how I fly, because that's the name, come on around here, because that's the name of the tune, right?
Hey, maniac.
Blair.
Oh my God. Colonel Blair,
Very nice meeting you.
Well, thank you.
Let me take your bag. Well, thank you very
Colonel Blair,
much.
sir. It's an honor, sir.
Nice to meet you.
Here.
Maybe she's not hungry.
Then there was Shenmue's production scope and its graphics, Metal Gear Solid and its sequels.
Behind D. Colonel, what's a Russian gunship doing here?
Through to the adventure gaming's renaissance in the 2010s of Quantic Dream, Telltale Games, and the Dark Pictures anthology.
Jason! Jason!
On a lot of levels, The Getaway succeeds. The cutscenes have a strong sense of camera placement and angles that are clearly inspired by filmmaking, and good filmmaking at that.
Now make your decision.
It makes the wise choice of staying in engine, Metal Gear Solid style, giving everything a coherent look. Compared with the overly wide-angled virtual lenses and floating cameras of many cutscenes of the era, things are more frequently shot with telephoto-style lenses and camera movements feel natural. As for the motion capture, you can see where Brendan McNamara was going with this, and how this is an immediate predecessor to his LA Noire developed with Rockstar Team Bondi.
I'm Officer Phelps, miss. I'm here about the shooting. Did you know the victim?
He was my boss.
While faces are big and chunky, they have realistic skin and blemishes, with early facial movement capture. It helps that the performances are, all around, good, too.
Morning, sunshine. Good to see you again. Do you sleep well? You look a little drowsy. Grievous, bring the boy around. I want his undivided attention.
LA Noire took it a step further with the power available on the next generation of machines, and even more detailed facial capture, leading the way for truly remarkable work in The Last of Us or Hellblade.
So is that everything you hoped for?
Jury's still out. But man, can't deny that view.
It's breathing. It's breathing. He knows she's getting closer. He can feel her coming closer. She's getting closer. They're watching.
This is a journey deep into darkness.
The Last of Us is an interesting touchstone for this game too. This was another Sony in-house production, and you can tell that what McNamara was aiming for was the truly cinematic blockbuster game style that would be what Sony exclusives in the future were known for, only 10 years earlier. The game pushes you immediately into the plot, barely introducing the lead, Mark Hammond, as his wife is frigid and his young son is kidnapped.
Shut him up!
Zeus!
Idiots! Bloody amateurs!
Come on, get in the car, quick!
You also get a taste of the kind of dialogue that this game will be inundating you with during its cutscenes. Fast-paced, a little cruel, and matter-of-fact. Unfortunately, this game does hit up a big pop culture block for me. I'm just not that interested in serious crime thrillers. I like my crimes goofy. I like my locks, stocks, and 2 smoking barrels. I like my pulps fiction. I enjoy a good crime caper with a hint of jokes and fun to go along with the medicine of seriousness. It's not to say that I can't appreciate the craft of an absolute classic like Goodfellas, but I'm not going to go out of my way to watch a Ray Donovan or, what's that one? Breaking Bad. But having already dipped my toe into a lot of different open world games for upcoming reviews and footage capture, I have to admit the writing is sharp. It is definitely steeped in English slang, featuring terms like claret, slag, slapper, ratchet and clank, topper, filth, DC, secret world of Alex Mack. Terms which may not be familiar to everyone, but you can figure them out through context clues. It's unfortunate that you don't really learn that much about Hammond going in, though the blanks are filled through incidental comments as you play. You learn that he has recently come out of a 5-year stint in jail for robbing a Ratchet and Clank. And now he's faced with a set of increasingly odious tasks to perform for local crime lord Charlie Jolson, all with the dangling carrot of getting his son back safe and sound. Hammond goes through some extreme lengths to do so, and every time the goalposts are set further back. The game does everything in its power to set up Jolson as a bad dude, even to the point of calling him a National Front member. He's the only one that really lets loose with the racial slurs as he attempts to instigate a race war between the rival gangs of the area. On a side note, there is one chapter where Hammond, his new ally Yasmin, and pretty much everyone have a weird loathing for a sex worker they need to pick up for Jolson.
Your man Colin seems to have hired some dancing slut. Goes by the name of Layla.
He wants me to grab some dancing slut named Layla.
Poor bitch.
Slag.
Alright, relax. She's a stripper. Don't worry about it. The bait and switch, do this and you get your son back jobs last for what seems like the majority of Hammond's story, right up until you reach Jolson's climactic finale boat. And then the game does something completely unexpected. It ends Hammond's story, and then swaps out protagonist for a character you have only recently just met, DC Frank Carter.
So do you want to stop that little Hitler? I know you. You're that copper from the prison van bust.
He's Filth Mark, Frank Carter of the Flying Squad.
At this point, you can continue with his own set of 12 missions, each happening concurrently with those of Hammond. It's a neat twist, though I do wonder if the repetitive nature of Hammond's missions might have worked better if they were mixed in throughout with Carter's. So how does the game play? Is it fun? This is a tough question when it comes to The Getaway, and this leads back to the mediocre scores it received at launch. In isolation, you can definitely show sections of the game which look almost modern in its pacing. The cover mechanics, the blind firing around corners, the explosions, the almost John Wick style of weapon swapping. When it works, it looks great. But what you see there doesn't show the sometimes literally dozens of attempts it can take me to get through a mission. With some games, like Driver 3 coming to mind in particular, these flavors of open world break down when they get on foot. Without a doubt, and coming a year and a half before Driver 3, this game's on-foot sections feel and play better. Now, whether or not they play better than Grand Theft Auto 3 or Vice City, that might come down to personal taste. I know that I've spent hours redoing missions before in both of those Rockstar games, particularly the last mission of GTA 3 and that one mall shootout in Vice City. But there are less missions in The Getaway, and most of them can be extremely frustrating. I spent, according to the in-game timer, 4 hours trying to complete the 20-minute final Hammond mission.
Fucking loser.
Fuck you, Hammond, I don't...
On foot, the controls are that of an early 2000s console game, before third-person action games really got their act together. Before Resident Evil 4, before The Matrix Path of Neo, and before Rocksteady's Batman Arkham Asylum, third-person action games were kind of all over the place. Controls weren't standardized and the control options were limited. And while it does have a reasonably good snap-to aiming that will only sometimes target a guy half a kilometer away and not the shotgun-wielding baddie who's 2 feet from you, the free aim is almost useless. For one, it's inverted left-stick aiming while you hold down the free aim button, kinda like GoldenEye. And it's not ADS or zoomed in, and the camera does not shift whatsoever. So it mostly feels like blind firing, especially with no on-screen reticle. Getting in and out of cover can sometimes be sticky, and there are moments where the game just doesn't respond to button inputs at all. One game that did do a very, very similar style of location and combat better, Max Payne, did release during development of this game, but sadly that doesn't seem to be an influence. Checkpoints are scarce, usually only at the end of a long drive. Further on-foot issues compound the frustration. Touching a moving car will immediately kill you, and The Getaway decides about 8 hours in to add some light platforming in the form of laser dodging and Tomb Raider-style shuffling around objects. Weirdly, these moments made me crave Tomb Raider's one square at a time grid-based tank controls, because those I can do. This is rough. But the frustration isn't limited to on-foot sections. Like the first 3 driver games, The Getaway's driving sections frequently have distance requirements and timers. Unlike Driver, they're invisible, so you'll very suddenly be confronted with game over screens. You can also be vague as to what you're supposed to be doing, such as one point where you have to take out a telephone company van so you can drive yours in to infiltrate a police station. Fun side note, in the original releases of this game, one of which I sadly used to have until I lent it to a friend who never gave it back, it was a blue British Telecom van, but they requested it be removed due to the violent nature of the mission in the game. It doesn't actually have on-screen prompts, and I didn't realize it was navigating me towards this van and not the police station. And even though it did pop up the failure state of "you lost the van," I wasn't sure what it meant by that, even though I had noticed a very prominent van at one point as I was doing the mission. This is a game that works best with walkthroughs, as the lack of UI can really hamper trying to figure out what the heck you're supposed to be doing. At any rate, these strict time limits for getting to one side of the city to the other can really be tight. There's one involving a prisoner truck that demands a perfect knowledge of routes and the lack of collisions. This is tough because unlike the paper-soft street lamps and fences of the Grand Theft Auto games, this more realistic open world contains a whole lot of bollards, fences, and bus stops that will bring your vehicle to a complete stop, and also, weirdly, deform them. Okay. Tangent time. The car selection is pretty neat in this game. I spent a couple of summers in England the years before this release, and its selection of cars really does do a good cross-section of the kind of vehicles you'll see if you time travel back to London in 2000, and hang out with me as I endlessly visit the Virgin Megastore and Tower Records. There's Toyota MR2s, TVRs, older and newer Saabs, the much-maligned Lexus LC430 Cabriolet and the LS400 sedan, the Nissan Micra, Renault Scenics, little Citroëns and Peugeots, and gangs drive some really neat cars like the Nissan Skyline and Rover SD1. It's very unusual to see licensed cars like these get smashed and torn up. I also think that basing these on real-world locations allows them to use the real names of restaurants and stores, so you do see Starbucks, Virgin Megastore, Boots, Marks & Spencer, McDonald's, Burger King, and more. It warms my completely indoctrinated by corporate capitalism heart. The driving model itself is... it's okay. It uses the pressure-sensitive buttons that the PS2 controllers came equipped with, so really mashing down on the accelerator and brake do help you stop and go faster, but this is tricky. These cars clip, smash, and spin easily. Combine that with the impressive traffic density and narrow streets of London, and you have a world that's realistic to drive through, but not necessarily fun. Compare with Grand Theft Auto 3 and Vice City's world, which are much less realistic, much less dense, but also much more of a playground to zoom through. There are some jumps situated around the city, but they just aren't that enjoyable to use, unlike the addictive super jump mechanics of the Grand Theft Auto 3D games. Car chases come in 2 types, getting away from pursuit and ramming a target off the road. The former can be annoying and relies on 2 strategies, getting the pursuing car hung up on traffic or immovable objects, or getting out of the car and shooting whoever's chasing you, which is generally the easier of the 2. Unfortunately, the police and rival gangs will pop up and start pursuit at random, though some of the time, Driving around within legal limits in the correct lane will stealth you around police unless they're in active pursuit of you. The gang cars will ruin that every time though, not only chasing you but alerting all the cops in the area too. Ramming a target off the road is surprisingly tough as they can take a beating, ignore physics, and will frequently speed away from you for no reason. This is one area where Driver and Grand Theft Auto both have much more satisfying loop. Put Grand Theft Auto and The Getaway back to back though, and you can tell one thing. For being on the same hardware and within the same window of release, there's definitely something impressive about the realistic aims of The Getaway. It's often said in game nerd circles, and I say this as a complete game nerd, that realistic graphics age poorly, but I don't necessarily think that's the case. If it's realistic at the cost of good art direction, it's going to look worse than compared with games with good art direction that are indifferent about realism. But I think that England's overcast skies, the grimy back streets, the brick facades, and old architecture look great in The Getaway. At moments, the aim for realism are a marvel. I love, in the final rush to the climactic finale ship, that for once the sun is starting to rise over the city. The interiors, too, have a great sense of care in establishing a kind of pre-baked time of day, from the gloomy light streaming in through windows to the soft gray shadows in the corners. Compare this with Vice City and you'll get two different takes on how to show a city for a video game. Vice City is all about the flares, the sunsets, the fog, and the rain. The Getaway is about gritty details. You can like either, or both, or neither. But I'm on the side of coming back and enjoying the work put into The Getaway's realism, as well as the playful playground and colorful nostalgia of Vice City. I'll definitely have to come back and take a look at its direct sequel, The Getaway Black Monday, which I'm not entirely sure I ever finished, as well as the weirdness of the auteur-led LA Noire. If you've got any open-world games you want me to take a look at, let me know in the comments. I do have a preference for tackling those set in the 19th, 20th, or 21st century, though I might play a remaster of a sci-fi game or two. Alright, so I'm gonna try giving these things a score. I'm not gonna make a Metacritic total. For graphics, I'm giving this 5 Koobs. Story, 4 Koobs. Open world, 3 Koobs. On foot, 2 Koobs. And driving, 3 Koobs. It's a great looking game for the time. The story is well written, if maybe a little repetitive during the Mark Hammond sections. The open world is very detailed and cool to explore, but during the main game you actually do not get much of a chance to explore it, and it's only when you're playing free mode that you really can. On foot is the weakest part of the game, for sure, with driving being okay. It's good, but it's just a little frustrating given the nature of the city. Well, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe and do all those bells and things. I don't know. I'm supposed to say that. See you next time.